How's it going, y'all? I'm Rashod from Swab Magazine. I'm back with Psych ATL, working on a project about Black mental health and Black men. As you know, this is something I feel very strongly about. I think mental health is one of the most important parts of our everyday life. So today I'm joined with Raymond. He is a motivational speaker, author, entrepreneur, but his most important roles to him is being a father and a husband. So Ben, thanks for joining us to do this.
Man, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Look forward to having a good conversation.
That's the fun part. So when did you feel that mental health was important for you as a Black man? Was it something that you kind of grew up with or something that you found later in life?
Well, I really didn't have the structure. Growing up for me was a lot of questions, but no answers. I grew up, my father wasn't in my life. Didn't have the structure at home. My mother battled mental illness, bipolar schizophrenia, so she lost me at 6 months to foster care.
Oh, wow.
So I looked for the stability there. She not only lost me, but she had to work through the courts to get me back. So I didn't have stability growing up. I bounced house to house. And when I looked for stability from my father, I saw him for 5 minutes at the age of 7. Well, 6 months he was with me from birth till the age of 7. And then I never saw him again for 20 years. So mental health, to process all these things, life is already hard enough, but to process these things as a child is very difficult for me.
Yeah.
And so I think mental health hit home to me very, very soon. I knew my mother had things that were going on that I couldn't process.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I got older and understood what she was going through, that was something that interested me, very much. And so that's something that's been a part of my life for the duration of my life.
Yeah. I also had like the father that wasn't really in the picture kind of situation. It happened later in life, so that was in teenage years. But to deal with that at a younger age, and then your mom is fighting to get you back. Was there abandonment feelings from your dad while feeling like the opposite from your mom? Like, how did that balance out for you at that age?
Yeah, I think at a young age, I didn't have somebody to talk to as an adult, and I always tell people you got to talk to somebody. Everybody needs a life coach.
Yeah.
I think in our community, we hate the stigma of therapists and those types of words, but to me, I've always called them a life coach. I'm a sports guy. I played sports, so I always had the confidence when I hit the basketball court or the football field, but when I left it is when all my problems were there. So to process that, yes, I felt abandoned from my father. Yes, I had anger. Why wasn't my father here? And I'd look in the stands, he wouldn't be there. From my mother, why is my family not like the Cosby Show? That's the show I watched as a kid, and I would see Theo and I would see the beautiful home, but that wasn't mine. And I always try to figure out, what's wrong with me at times. What's wrong with me? Why did I get a better family? Why it was me? What was the problem? Was that why my dad? So there's a lot of questions I think any person goes through. And so to process that is definitely difficult, and something that was, for me, a process. I was always honest with my feelings, but until I was an adult where I could share all these, stories, I was embarrassed. I'd walk into rooms and who's going to lead with, my dad's a kingpin drug dealer. Mom is this, and,
Right.
and will you date me? Or can I, like that was just something that I was not accustomed to talking. And now who I am today is quite different of who I was before.
So I dealt with that, and it wasn't until I started, I got in a certain circle of friends where it became comfortable to kind of like explain like life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you find yourself in a space where you could be that vulnerable and say like, this is my past, this is my upbringing, and not be afraid of the judgment from it?
I think probably I have a few pivotal moments in my life. Probably the first one that comes to mind was leaving home.
Mm-hmm.
In 8th grade, my mother was hooked on drugs and dealing with so many things that I knew that my life was going to become that. And I chose to leave and put myself in foster care. So through high school, I lived with 3 different families over a 4-year period.
Wow.
That was a big moment for me, but it was also a crushing blow. You know, to leave the only person that I felt loved me was very difficult for me. We maintained a great bond, a great relationship. My mom's doing very good today.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, as a young, 8th grader going into high school, very difficult for me to process that, to understand that. But I knew that that was the best thing. My mother knew it was the best thing. And the second probably was I was post-college. I was trying to figure out the man that I wanted to be,
Right.
but I realized I wasn't. Outside to the outside world, I was successful. I was doing all these great things, but I didn't know who I was. I was walking through the earth, and I didn't know who I was. I didn't know if my dad was sitting across the room. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know any history on that side of the family. So I just felt like I was just walking this earth. And for me to be a husband, for me to be the man I wanted to be, I had to find him. But I was always so afraid. So I would start internet searches. I would start looking, and I would stop because I was too scared, because I thought the answer would be he was dead or he didn't want me. And so I was watching this movie, which most of you guys probably have seen, is Antoine Fisher's story. I was sitting with a girl that I was dating at the time. I was watching this movie, and I knew I had to see him. And it was that moment when he was going through the phone book, and he was looking for names. I left the movie theater, went to the bathroom, acted like my stomach was upset. I was crying in the bathroom, and I was like, I got to find him. From that point, I made a point to find my father, and I ultimately ended up finding him through an internet search. And through making that difficult decision, because sometimes we know it's the right move to make, but we're too afraid to do it.
Yeah.
I found out I had a sister I never knew I had. So we're very close. We're 7 years apart. She knew about me. I didn't know about her. If I didn't make that phone call, I would have never had a sister. I wouldn't have had cousins that lived down the street from me. And so for me, that fear of the unknown, I think, not just in the Black community, just everybody in general, we have to follow our instincts. We have to follow our gut feelings to go for whatever it is that we know is right. And so for me, I knew it was right to do that search, to find my father, no matter what that answer was going to be.
Yeah.
And when I found out where he was and who he was in federal prison doing 13 years. He ultimately got out of jail. And so for me, I found out so much stuff about me, and I felt like I became complete.
Yeah.
I didn't need my father necessarily. I was an adult, but I needed to put the pieces together, the puzzle that I felt was just thrown on the ground as a child, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Because when you do that, even again, you feel like you don't necessarily, there's nothing that person can contribute to your upbringing at that point. You're grown, you've gotten to this space. But it's something about like closing chapters, and that makes something else in life easier. So when you get to that point, and again, you face the abandonment issue, and now the process and thought of being rejected, that's no longer on the table. How does that feeling at that point propel you into your own personal and professional life?
Well, I think, and I have these conversations with my wife all the time. We had one today. I was out playing basketball with my son last night. And I think when you come from tough beginnings, right, you come from all this stuff, you have to fight and claw for everything that you got. It puts I always say, the dog in you, puts that burning fire in you. And it's funny to see my son, who has pretty much anything at his disposal. It's very different lives that we live, right? And so the thing I'm getting at is, like, as an adult, for me right now, where I see and what I go through in the journey, I think that it's important to really like reflect back and to really look through the mirror and through those channels. For me, I never could go back to a lot of these places for so long, right? Because everybody deals with trauma differently. My trauma that I dealt with when I left that place, I was born in Milwaukee. When I left all these places, I never went back. I never looked back at it. And part of my therapy over the years, when I decided to write my book and write my story, the person I was sitting down with pulling these intimate places forced me to go back to all these moments, childhood moments when I was at home alone and no food and mom on a drug binge, all these places that I just kind of just forgot about.
Yeah.
And not only was it therapy for me, but it was it was something I needed to do to understand. And so as I got more comfortable talking about it, you build the strength as you live through it. I'm on the other side of it. I don't think there's an embarrassment. Every one of the individuals in this room have a story. Everybody has trauma. Everybody has situations that are probably 10 times worse than me. I'm no different than you. I just feel you just got to keep getting up and keep going and keep pushing. And I'm in a place now where I'm comfortable to talk about it. I'm comfortable to say, hey, my dad was in for 13, back in for another 8.
Yeah.
My dad just met my son a month ago.
Wow.
He watched my wedding on TV, the birth of my son on TV. He just met my dad. So this full circle moment that we're talking about happened for me about a month ago.
Yeah.
I always wanted my son to be able to meet my father, but he couldn't because he's in prison. And so for me as a journey as a kid, wondering, am I good enough? Am I these things? Now I have a son looking at me who carries my name. And, you know, I'm a faith-based guy. My son was born on the exact same day that I met my wife, June 16th, 2012. I met my wife at a mentoring camp. She's fostering excellence in the young boys and girls that are coming from at risk. I'm doing the same. We meet. We're changing lives together, but we don't know each other.
Yeah.
And then my son is born the exact same day, 4 years later.
That's crazy.
It is, you know, I can't make that up. And so for me, I believe that I was put through these moments, put through these trials so that I could be a voice for other people to gain inspiration to share their story.
Nah, I love that. I love that. All right. So you go through life. At what point did you decide you wanted to start and create your own business? Because you built your business from ground up. Like this was you. When did you decide you wanted to do that?
I think I've always been a hustler. As a kid, kid, I had a hustle for everything I had. I was the person in the neighborhood trading cards. You didn't know enough. I'm old now. I'm telling my age. So we had trading cards. I'm trading. I've got this person's rookie. I got this person's rookie card. I was always making a business deal.
Yeah.
Didn't understand it. So wherever I went, wherever I worked, I was making a deal.
Yeah.
I'm always a deal maker. It's funny, full circle. My son's trying to make deals with me now, and I'm like, no, you can't out-slick me. But I think the jobs that I worked, high school, my first job was Dairy Queen. I just wanted to be around a bunch of girls. That's really what that was.
So Dairy Queen it was.
I had all my focus on basketball, and so I didn't really take work seriously like I took sports until I got to college. I had an internship. I went to the University of Minnesota. Okay. And play basketball there. I had an internship called Lamar Advertising. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It's like when you pass all the highways, there's always underneath on the billboard, you're going to see the company. They're usually the ones that own all of those.
Wow.
And so I took an interest in just learning the sales side, and I took a class. I was a business major, and I took a class. It was a marketing class, and we had to do this presentation. And one of the professors that pulled me aside and was like, you got a gift at this, you just don't understand. And so for me, I had to kind of understand what my gift was. My mouth always got me in trouble. I was always talking, I was always making a deal. And so when I started to kind of apply my mind and put the focus on my mind just as much as I was on the things that I love, I got my first job out of school, worked for a company called Cintas Corporation. It's a facility service, so like the floor mats, the uniforms, everything people wore. So I sold contracts. I was the top sales rep in the country. So I got like a $30,000 base salary, but I made 3 times that in commissions my first year outside of college. So I'm like, you know, I'm thinking I'm balling. Then I started to understand what is the company making on those deals. So I'm like, I'm kind of getting ripped off right there. This is kind of, And so for me, I always knew I couldn't really work for people, you know, like my first corporate job. I'm coming in with a different color shirt and tie. I'm supposed to, the manager's pulling me, hey, we need white shirt, white tie. This is how we dress.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was like, I want to be able to own, and I want to be able to employ people, coach them, teach them how I want it,
Mm-hmm.
and do it my way. So I worked at several sales jobs. I got my first opportunity to own in 2007.
Okay.
Got in the insurance world. One of the families I lived with was a big insurance agent. I did like a site visit with him. I told him I'd never do it again. I said, it's horrible. I think it's boring. It's old white people selling stuff that just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So I was like, I'm not doing it. And I call him like 4 years later saying, well, you're not going to believe it. So I'm going to open up this insurance agency. And so I did it with the understanding of where I came from. My community, I don't think we're educated enough in insurance. Doesn't mean we're not smart enough, just the education, teaching people in baby terms, teaching people the way it is. And I think we all want to do something when we see somebody look like us. So I wanted to be a ball player because that's all I saw. Ball players, drug dealers.
Yeah.
And so at a lot of these mentoring camps that I go and I participate in, I'm making it cool to be, whether it be investments, real estate, insurance agent, because I look like them, they look like me. And so I think we just need to go into our community more and share, whatever it is, whether it's a florist, whatever it is, people just want to have a good life and take care of their families. So for me, I wanted to own.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to show up when I wanted, do what I want, but more importantly, try to teach other people. So I really make a passion to help people get their own business, develop it. So whether I'm selling toilet paper, legal drugs, insurance, it's all the same wheelhouse. You just got to put systems in place and operate the business, with yourself out of it, and make a culture that people want to be at.
Yeah, I think that the representation is important. My nephew wants to be a veterinarian. Like, I think I know maybe 2 Black veterinarians. So, and they're not even in state, which I'm sure there's a bunch of them that are in Georgia. But it's just knowing that there's a possibility of him seeing that. Growing up in Pennsylvania, like, there was no Black business owners that we really saw. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that just felt like it was out of reach. A lot of the big houses that you saw were out of reach.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't something that you aspire to until you see it.
I agree.
And then say, I want some of that too. So,
and like, my son has no excuse now. He got every social media. You want to be a scientist, you start following the top 5 scientists that look like you. Like, there's so much exposure now that people have no excuse to really get their own.
So when you're growing and building your business, at what point do you say, I read one of your social media posts, and it was just basically a post of saying, like, I've done enough of this the wrong way and I need to scale back. What makes you shut down your business and say, I'm gonna start over?
Well, I think a reference to that post, I always tell people pain is the hardest lesson. I think the problem with most people in business is they go in business with friends or family. Not to say you can't go in business with friends and family, but you want to go in business with people that you want to grow the business with, and you feel that they can bring something to the table. One of the examples of pain is the hardest lesson, and when you say what makes you scale back, when I first went into real estate, I bought some fixer-uppers. Mm-hmm. So I was doing mortgages on the side, and there's a guy who came to me. It was like, get rich quick. It was like, okay, I got this rental property. Okay, you can take back X amount of money, cash, da-da-da-da-da. Too much trust there, too much trust, not enough, and so I got into it. There was a lot of repairs that had to be done. The person tried to back out of it. We had a commonality as far as conversation. And my lesson learned there was like contracts.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm just cutthroat, but I do contracts on everything that comes through. everything that moves. And it's really to protect both people. So now we can just get to business. We don't have to worry about that, but protect you, protect me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we want to start something. We rush in, we jump in, and we don't do the research.
Yeah.
Or we go start something that we have no idea, right? So why would you go start doing insurance, put all your money, all your stuff in, and you've never talked to somebody that's done insurance, been successful at it?
Right.
Or we go talk to our girlfriend or our boyfriends, or homeboy, homegirls about relationship advice to who? People that ain't ever been successful in a relationship.
Right.
So we just go to the person that we trust, but we don't go to the person that we need.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So I try to surround myself with, when you say scale back, I want people that are constantly trying to make me better.
Yeah.
My conversations, like on the way here, my closest comrades that I talk to, that I trust, we're not highlighting each other. We're not, hey, good job, man. Oh, man, that's great what you did, that kind of job. No, we're focusing on dialing in, how do we get better? How do we get better? How do we get better?
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing, is we don't have honest conversations with people that need honest conversations. And so when people ask me, hey, what you think? I'm going to tell you what I think.
You know,
I'll tell you what I think. I might hold back for a second because I'm observing, I'm trying to study, but I will say what I think, because I will want that in return.
I've learned those are the best friendships, like not the cheerleaders, but the ones that will say, have you thought about doing this way? Maybe you should change this because I don't think this part is your strong suit. And when you're able to do that and have those conversations and take a look back at what you're doing, it makes it not necessarily easier to propel forward, but it makes you more conscious of that thing that you may see as your weak suit.
Yeah.
So,
and the last thing I'll say on that is, like, the scale back part of it now, as I'm matured, I think sometimes when we start, we just want to sell as much as we can, or I want to get as many, whatever we're selling, whatever we're trying to get out there. Now I'm trying to focus and process and really try to coach other people. How can we do it more efficiently? And how can we prevent XYZ to happen? Yeah. Every restaurant has a bad waiter or waitress experience. That doesn't mean it's a bad restaurant.
right.
So how do we prevent this from happening again? And that's the scale back. I do more time studying on the issues. You know, CEO, you every day is a problem.
Yeah.
But it's a problem I like. It's a problem I welcome. And so it's just focusing on how to process that.
Yeah.
And that's what I was coaching somebody just when I was on the phone sitting here before we started. He was in the insurance world, and he could run circles around everybody. He's never owned, and he's never had this pressure of, like, everybody relying on him, everybody needing him. Everybody gets paid before, every bill guy has to get paid before him. And so he's having to process that. One of my suggestions, I was, man, you need to go talk to somebody, your life coach, because you're exploding and you should be jumping for joy right now.
Yeah.
And so sometimes at different phases in our life, we need to recalibrate, and go talk to somebody, or process, hey, am I handling this right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's for me. I put somebody in, did I handle this situation right?
Yeah.
Here's what happened. Because we only see it through our lens. And I think that's the rookie mistakes when I started, was like, one-man show, you do it this way, and you don't have anybody around you helping steer you in the right direction.
Right. So that makes absolute sense. How did that affect, like, you, like, relationship wise, and, like, again, having a son and, like, going through this process with building this business and trying to grow and putting that time there, and maybe potentially not being present for the other parts of, like, family life? How did you balance that out, and how hard was that affecting you?
Well, I'm 43 now, so I got into business 27. So first part of those years, that was it, didn't matter. So if I didn't have a child then.
Right.
And I was married young and divorced. And a lot of that came from both of us, that we were not ready to be married.
Right.
Then on top of that, we were living in different cities. On top of that, we were business and coaching. All this stuff was going on. On top of me discovering my father and all these other things, and just
Yeah.
so I just wasn't ready. And so coming out, I didn't think I wanted to get married again, right? And so dating and work, everything out on the table. So me getting married to my wife, Carly, that was like we built a strong friendship, from afar. She understood how I walked and moved. I understood how she did, the importances of me and my business, how she fit in that. And so, and ironically, she ended up getting into the business. But I think you have to have a balance. And what is that balance is different for everybody. So my balance is not the same as everybody else's. So my wife, when we got married, we came back from our honeymoon. 1 month in, she's pregnant. We didn't expect that.
Right.
Okay. Baby on the way. We're in a condo. Yeah. We got married in Atlanta, moved to Dallas. She's a twin. She's leaving her twin for the first time.
Wow.
I got a business and a baby on the way. We end up moving to Atlanta. I completely built that business off the ground, but having an unsuccessful marriage, knowing what family means, having the structure that I felt we were going to have here, I was like, you know what, we'll move here. So I gave all that up, started over, started another operation out here, and I felt like I was equipped to handle that from what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
However, I've moved differently. I've hired, more individuals to take pressure off me so that I can make my son had an arts program yesterday.
Okay.
That was at 2:15. I found out about it when we were going to and big deal, right? Okay, I'll make the next one. That's a big deal to me because growing up, I didn't have it.
Yeah.
So when my son says that, it don't matter who that meeting is with, I'm canceling. And so I moved what I had to move and made that. So it's very important. I'm on a plane every week. I don't miss my son. I don't miss anything for my son. I'll take less money before I miss, these critical years. That doesn't mean I don't work hard. I work like a dog, but I feel like God will bless me. Kind of the same model like Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday, but they're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And so I feel like God will bless me in different avenues by, employing more, taking more stress off me, and allowing my son to see that, and see the hard work, but also be a part of that is important to me.
And that's interesting. Me and my mom had a conversation. I went to college. She wrote me like this long letter, kind of like stuffed into one of my boxes that were in my dorm room and left. And it was basically saying like how she apologized for working so much. And she was saying like all the things that she missed that I probably didn't think about that she remembers missing.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the disappointment that she knows that I had from those moments. And I try to share with people that I know who have kids that it's not always the paycheck in which you can buy them. Like just being there makes a big difference. So I was in band the whole way through school. The first time my mom saw me play an instrument after starting in 3rd grade was when I was in 11th grade.
Wow.
So all of that time she missed it. And from that time she saw in 11th grade, she never missed anything else. So it didn't matter if it was a parade, a football game, whatever, she was always present, and it changed the entire dynamic of how I felt about music at that point. So
I think that's really powerful. We try to give my son lessons though that he understands that some people, you just can't be there, right? They got to work 2 jobs to make stuff shake, or 3 jobs, 4 jobs, whatever that is. So I make it very known for my son how my wife and I grew up, and very different than him.
Mm-hmm.
And he has to appreciate those things and not take those little things for granted. On the flip side, if I can be there, I'm always going to be there. If I can't and truly can't, then, okay. But I think it hits families differently, and that's the mental health part of it. That's the pull on me. I think I've missed my son's 6. I FaceTimed 1 game where I just couldn't be part of that. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything else, I've been there. And so, and that's the relationship dynamic, my wife takes a lot of that load off my shoulders. So it's a team effort. Some days out of the week, she's got them on lockdown, I do. And so like for me right now, she's at a conference for women's health in North Carolina, and she doesn't get back till tonight. Drop off, pick up, food, all that. That's me.
Yeah.
So I make it like it has to be a balance. You need a team, and some teams look differently. It might be grandma and mom. It might be brother, sister, and cousin. So every family or team is different.
Yeah.
And so we just got to try to do the best we can to make ours win.
No, absolutely. Now, in the beginning, you said you brought up your book. So tell us about that. How can people purchase it? What do you want them to take from the book?
The biggest thing takeaway would be the title's Playing the Game Without a Coach. Playing the Game Without a Coach, You can find me anywhere, Amazon. You can go to my website. I'm looking right at you right now. But no, Playing the Game Without a Coach was really derived from who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So everything about me is sports. I got the confidence from sports and was able to get to free education and build my business model off of basketball. I think we think that if you don't make it to NBA, it's a bust. For me, I think I became who I was in the success, the same level off of basketball, but using my mind once I got there.
Yeah.
And so that was really my life story. And through life, I've played the game without a coach. I've had key people in my life that have shown love to me. Don't want to take that away. I wouldn't be where I'm at without everybody that's touched me, from the families that touched me to some of the coaches. And I just wanted someone out there that picked that book up, whether they were 60 trying to start a career, whether they were 20 and overcoming trauma, that they can play this game of life without a coach. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm no smarter. I'm no better. I just keep getting up and I keep going, and I'm going to live to see another day.
Yeah.
And really, my entire story, I thought when I finished the book, was over when I found my dad. So when I found my dad, that was it. I was done with the book. I stopped. And I had some difficult things going on in my life, and I just quit writing. I came back to it full circle at the end. I said, I got to finish this thing. And the book ends, for me, the really life complete was with my son. So the cover of the book, my son now understands it's not him, but for so long has thought it was him. He's like, who is that? He's like, that's me. Yeah. It was me as a baby. And you see this person that would walk into boardrooms and walk in to see CEOs, and they were like, man, who are your parents, man? Where you come from?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I know you got Ivy League, you talk well, and I'm like, I was just laughing. In corporate, I'd never share my life story because I always, how corporate is it's cutthroat, and they don't care what it is that you have. So why am I going to get intimate with you and talk about this when you're going to somehow fire me? So for me, it was just like, we're here for business. Let's get business done, nothing more. And I found myself in one-offs, like let's say me and you talking, like, yeah, this is going on. I'm like, really? Man, I didn't know that. And as I started opening up around camps and stuff like that, more people come to me, more. I never met my father. I almost committed suicide. This almost happened. And I was like, I got to share this. And when a girl comes up to you and says, I almost was going to kill myself and your story inspired me to not, that's like,
yeah,
I couldn't even say anything. And I'm like, you are like great. You will do great things in this world. Just share your story. But not everybody's ready. Like my sister has had her own things. She's not ready to share it. I think you have to be ready. I didn't share this because it was very difficult for me to share my story. The person I protected the most was my mother, because my mother has never dealt with all the traumas. So for me to share it and tell my story, you have to realize you're also hurting certain people in your life. My dad, he has a different lens of how he was there for me.
Yeah.
So when he would hear, he'd be like, man, boy. And my mother, that was the one person I wanted the blessings for. And that's the dedication I made the book for, is because my mother is the strongest human being I've ever met. Like, I'm going to see her. It's ironic we're talking. I'm flying out to see her tomorrow. That woman, if she had $100 in her bank account, would give every single person sitting in this room all their money. She wouldn't keep a dollar for herself. She bounced checks to put tennis shoes on me. She'd done everything she could with the tools she had. Yeah. So I'm grateful for my mom. I love my mom, but I told my mother, you know, let me tell it, let me share it so that someone else can understand it. And my mom, through life right now, she'll send $100. She on government assistance, everything. I had right to say, I'm like, what are you sending me this for? Take your BJ's until I send it right back to her. I'm like, well, we don't, this is not, that's my mom. She is loving, and there's so many loving people, but there's a whole dynamic here, right? And you have to forgive the people around you for the traumas. You have to forgive yourself. And so a lot of times with my mom, there were times I harbored anger. Mm-hmm. There were times I was mad. There were times I was mad at my dad, just even when he was locked up in the last several years. Yeah, I wouldn't write letters to him. I told him before he went back, I said, I'm not going to write letters to you. I'm not going to be doing all that stuff. You're going to make those choices. But I would fly in, I would see him, I would look him in the eyes like, okay, he's at this place. And so my family is who it is. I'm proud of who I am. You know, what I didn't share and some of the things you learn in the book, I was born a different name, David Antoine Brumfield. My name got changed. Benjamin Troy Raymond. I'm like two dynamic individuals, and you mix them together. My name got changed without me even knowing it.
Wow.
There's so many things that people find out. I'll give a book to somebody in my office and be like, man, I didn't know that about you. And I was like, and you ain't got another excuse to miss another day of work or do any da-da-da-da-da-da. Because all these things that happen to us is just things that happen.
Things, yeah.
And then trauma and how we deal with it is going to dictate how we make it in this world. And mental health is the biggest thing for me. You know, that's like the biggest thing standing, because I look at all the women that I've loved in my life have dealt with so much trauma. And if they would have been protected more, or if they've been given more opportunities, who's to say? And so when I see people out, like today I was talking to a homeless guy, I don't look at them and be like, you're homeless, because my mom should be homeless. They haven't dealt with the trauma or medication or something that isn't there. And I'm fortunate that I can play a role in my mother's life. We got to play a role in some of these other people's lives. Yeah. You know, and that's, you know, I could go on and on about that.
Nah, I always wonder about people's backstories. So I know situations happen to people. It's just knowing how to handle them if you know how to handle it. Sometimes you don't have the capacity to do it. So, but again, thank you for
anytime
being so transparent and vulnerable. I know it's not the easiest thing for Black men to do, so definitely appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate you even talking about it. I think we have, if the more we talk about it, the more comfortable we can talk about it while we're smoking a cigar or watching a sports game. Like if we can get more comfortable talking about that as men,
yeah,
then I think we'll be in a better place. And so appreciate you having me on. Definitely look forward to coming back.
Nah, absolutely.
My God, appreciate you.
Thanks, man.